the recommendation of the Education Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Board of School Directors is always eager to recognize students who have distinguished themselves academically and in extracurricular activities. And whereas these three West Grand Intermediate School students, Maria Benedict, Destiny Cristiano, and Emily White, are extremely bright, hardworking, and dedicated 8th grade students who recently competed in the 2014 National C-SPAN Student Camp Video Competition. And whereas, over the course of 4 months, these creative and civic-minded students thoroughly researched veterans issues, developed interview questions, interviewed policymakers, chose and shot on-location video footage, and edited audio and video components of the project aimed at raising awareness of veterans' needs nationally. And whereas Maria, Destiny, and Emily distinguished themselves by being awarded a 3rd place prize in the 2014 National C-SPAN Student Camp Video Documentary Competition for their Commit Support to Veterans video project. And now therefore be it resolved that the official congratulations to the Board of Education is extended to Maria Benedict, Destiny Cristiano, Emily White, their parents, their project coordination teacher, Mrs. Sarah Manning, and all their teachers and administrators at West Grand Intermediate School, respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question, roll call.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwight?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli? Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Right here. Okay, thank you.
I actually thought that we were going to show that video out here tonight, so maybe we can get it on our TV station or on our Facebook page. And who hasn't watched it yet, we'll have the opportunity to see it there. Before we have the communications to the board, I forgot to mention that we had a teacher, Mrs. Kathleen Casey, an ESL teacher at Maycroft School, pass away on March 24th after battling cancer. She was 56 years old and the mother of 4 wonderful children. She's survived by her husband, Dr. Jerome Casey, and both of her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Kenneth Casey. Oh, okay. And, she made every day better for her students and colleagues, and if we could just have a moment of silence for her. Thank you. Communications to the board, President Moore.
Yes, there are discussions about litigation, personnel, and real estate.
Visiting delegations. We have Dr. Thomas Bailey's from the CTC. Welcome, Dr. Bailey's.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Bayless. I recently been appointed the Administrative Director of the Career Technology Center. I will introduce myself briefly, but before that I want to tell you that we prepared a cake to bring your viewers to our appreciation this evening. The cake was prepared by Connor Gilbright. Connor is a junior from Scranton, and Chef Mark is one of my Connor can show it to you and just going to cut it into certain pieces if you'd like. While I was doing that, I'll introduce myself and take some questions from you. Connor is a junior in the Culinary Arts program. He won a silver medal in the Skills USA competition. He's won several competitions for his skills at the CTC. He is an honor student in Boulder Swing District and at the CTC. And Connor is a candidate for his Eagle Scout. We're very proud of him at the CTC. Again, the cake is filled with our appreciation for the huge investment that the Scranton School District Board has made in the renovation project of the school. The renovation project is critical to the success of the school. We're well on our way. We have that well underway, and we're very proud of that. We're very thankful to all of you for supporting that. As I said, my name is Tom Bailey's. I'm primarily a lifelong resident of the Forest City area. My wife and I have lived most of our lives there, except for a short stint when I worked at the nuclear power plant. I had one whole career in engineering, mostly in nuclear power. I also worked for about 8 years as the technology director of the Western Wayne School District, and the last 7 years as the director of technology for the Colonial Intermediate Unit EC, and now I'm at the CTC. I'm very excited about all the opportunities that there are at the CTC, and I'm also very anxious to begin the improvements that we can make. So while Connor's on listening, I would mind to answer any questions on
Can we remove the calories?
that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
It is that free cake, and I guarantee you this won't stay with you very long, and I will work it all out. And that's all right, I like you so early. As you've heard many times, you can't have everything you need to do tonight. You can't have everything you need to do compliments with it.
Did you mention earlier that Connor's an Eagle Scout?
Connor is a candidate for Eagle
Almost.
Scout. Got it.
Congratulations.
One year back to go, it's probably Eagle Scout.
That's a remarkable one.
Please share the cake with the audience, too. So
There's plenty.
Any questions for me?
Hey, I think that piece was free.
Thank God it has no calories.
No, that's being passed.
That looks delicious.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you. So, have there.
Okay, continuing on to our
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, of the State School Board. I'm Gerard Hatton, from Lackawanna County's Community Relations Department. I realize I always have to follow the every speaker, but I don't want to top that, so we'll do our best. We did this evening on behalf of the Lackawanna County Commissioners and the Lackawanna County Commission for Women. I'd like to extend congratulations to 3 of your students who placed first, second, and third in the Lackawanna County Commission for Women's annual Book Mark competition. And this year, the commission issued prints book marks for first, second, and third place winners. First place was Olivia Zeal, second place was Kate Rosen, and third place was Andrew Wheeler. And there's different mix of women from different time periods who made significant contributions to the history of Lackawanna County and surrounding area. And it's Queen Sweet, as I said, she principal earlier in the evening, so our congratulations. And my thanks personally to the board and administration, because we love to talk about these programs. It's always going to be good for students, and it's never a surprise to see students from the straight school districts perform very well in many contests or competitions that I'm talking about. So our thanks to the whole district, and particularly congratulations to the winners and to the teachers who support it, and the whole staff here with us community on another great year for our conference. On that same note, another contest that we have running now, through April 18th, which is the deadline. I have discussed this with Mrs. Orr, just as a reminder. Our 7th annual Armed Forces Drawing and Essay Contest is underway in all for entries. 3 categories. The first one is for grades K through 2nd grade, which is the patriotic drawing contest, and the patriotic topic. Then grades 3 through 8, an essay on the topic of why I appreciate American veterans. And then grades 9 through 12, an essay on what I would tell Americans on the bodies. There is no restriction on what students can enter, so for students at any ability level, and all students in the district. So we see to it, you can administer the program as you see fit on your administration, but all students are welcome and encouraged to participate. And last year we did have a sizable number of entries from the Straight School Districts, and we appreciate that again. All students are welcome to participate in that. And secondly, we're one of the very summits very close to Steele, so Lackawanna County Parks and Recreation Department has none of the plays and programs. Most of all, not all of these listed on the master schedule earlier this year. But just a reminder, we've got individual flyers and registration forms for several of these programs, including our youth soccer clinic at Dave Park, County's outdoor basketball clinic for children, the annual Dave Park fishing derby, and also there's several different golf programs, including the youth golf clinic, the youth golf skills challenge, and also the youth tennis. So we've got these taking place. Number of them are at Dave Park, or others like John County. We'd like to share with the students and the parents as you see fit. And a lot of great activities there. For the summer months, the reports, children stay active, mentally, physically, when they're off in the summer. This is a great way to do that. And we're a local community. And just two items to wrap up first. As many of you are aware, Lackawanna County Commission participated in 4 Black registration conference last Wednesday, right before changing Lackawanna County structure of government. I do have a copy of the presentation here. We'll meet with the Secretary and the reference for this review of the presentation. Feel free. And lastly, I have spoken many times with Justin Ferrer, but we do some of the social media channels on behalf of the school districts. And Lackawanna County government, we've been running Facebook for the last few years. We've seen some good growth and followers. We've had some good interactions with residents of the county, which is good information. And Justin and I discussed the ways that the school district possibly grows on social media, creating tips. Small, but it's a significant example of your governmental cooperation. So we hope we will see your social media operation continue to grow and prosper. We look forward to sharing the development content of that as it comes up. So that's all I have. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else want to speak to the board? Report from the PTA President, Melinda Crocus.
Good evening, Melinda. Thank you very much for stopping by. There's very little to report. I want to say congratulations to all the students. That was a great showing. Basically, we just had a very well attended and successful reflections dinner earlier this month, and that's really about it. It's quiet on the PTA now.
Thank you.
Report from the student representatives.
Hi, I'm Laura Tinsey, President of Student Council of the Principal. And hi, my name is Taylor Justin, and I am Vice President of Experience. We're here to tell you what I did in grade school. The March 2014 SAT score averaged 950, nearly 90-point increase from the March 2013 score. Scranton High School students team participated in the University of Scranton game competition. The team won the Ingenuity Award for the design and construction of a radio receiver. Kurt Fisher also won the Individual Knowledge Award and won a $1,500 scholarship to the University of Scranton. 5 students from Scranton High School competed in the computer fair held at Keystone College. Samuel Swords won first place in the reading and math category. He will go to compete in the state competition at Dickinson College. 15 art major students will participate in the third annual Citizen Day art exhibit. Seniors from Scranton High School, Zach Jenkins and John Ruby were named Scranton Times Scholastic Superstars. They will be honored at dinner April 23rd. John Ruby is also the first student to be accepted into Harvard University since 2001. Junior Chris Story has been accepted to the Pennsylvania Governor School for the Sciences. This is a 6-week program taking place this summer in Pittsburgh. Craig LaSalle, a member of the Scranton High School baseball team, was named Scranton Times Active. Scranton High School Cancer Club had over 50 volunteers to help out with the Scranton Half Marathon held yesterday. The Scranton High School production of the World Plaza was held this weekend, and they sold out all 3 of their public performances. 3 additional shows will be performed this week for elementary and middle schools. The Scranton High Night was competing in the 54 competition in Tennessee this weekend. Scranton High School has just Sunday raising over $1,200 to Oxford. And the Scranton High School County will be held April 30th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board of directors. My name is Paul Mulvaney, and I serve as senior vice president of Scranton High School. And I'm here to share with you some of the notable events and achievements seen on us in the last month's. I'm usually accompanied by student council president Caleb Palmer, who could not be with us tonight due to other extracurricular obligations. So I'm here to talk. Last week, our school had 2 resumes for students and faculty, one for autism awareness, which raised around $750, and the other for coaches share against cancer, which raised around $800. Also last week, our student and Spanish classes of all 1 to 4 levels competed in the National Spanish Exam. Last year, we had students win gold, silver, bronze, and honorable mention medals at the national level, as well as top ranks based out of King's College in our local region. We will receive this year's results in May. Senior Danielle Krause was recently named to the 2014 Tiger Shape Scholastic Superstar team. She will be represented with a medal at ceremony held this April at the Tiger Shape Building. Danielle was also named NEM Scholar of the Year, where she will be recommended at Limited Valley in May. Congrats to Danielle on her accomplishments. Senior Alex Lozada placed first in the state music for the PTA Reflections Contest. He will now go on to be judged at the national level. We had many students enter the Scholastic and NSRF Drive to Life Public Service Announcement Contest. Of those students, freshman Brianna Evans won a $500 prize as a runner-up. Freshman Brianna Tola and Alexis Smith and junior Aaron Cole each placed in the top 25 out of 900 entrants. On March 28th, many juniors competed at the Wills IEEE Engineering Olympics. Of those students, Leah Carino and Jerry Coyne placed first in their category. Our drama partner recently closed out Striker Musical, which was performed on March 28th to 30th. If you happen to see it, you know it was an excellent production. We also had a number of students submit essays for the 2014 Women's History Month Essay Contest, organized by the League of Women Voters of Lafayette County. In the 10th through 12th grade category, sophomore Kirsten Garcelli and senior Molly Murphy placed first and second respectively. And for the 7th through 9th grade category, freshman Noah Zach placed first. On April 29th, 78 seniors will be inducted into the West Scranton High School chapter of the National Honor Society. In addition, 63 juniors will be inducted on probationary status. I do do have one issue, however, that's brought to my attention from students that would like to be compared to the board. There are classrooms on the third floor that have leaking ceilings as well as an auditorium where during our recent production of Shrek, part of the ceiling fell. No one was injured, but it is in my best interest that this be just to the board. Thank you.
Great job.
Report from the PSBA representative.
The Northeast region for PSBA is going to put together a forum for us to explain the superintendent evaluations and the new state regulations. It's on Thursday, April 24th. There's a light meal at 5:30, and I think then it's 6 to 8 in the library at Scranton High School.
You have to pre-register for that, so either online
Yeah, I'm gonna forward that to the rest of the directors first thing in the morning.
All right, thank you. The solicitor's report, Attorney Menora.
I have nothing to do with
Is anyone in the superintendent's report?
it. There is no superintendent report.
Thank you. All right. Now, the consent agenda, which involves items 11 through 18. Can we have a vote on that?
I need a motion and a second.
I'd like to make a motion to accept.
Second.
Second.
On the question? Roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dewey?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli? Mr. McAndrew? Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan? Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
And resolution for 7 meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Second.
On the question? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dewey?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli? Mr. McAndrew? Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan? Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Okay. Budget and Finance Director Donahue.
To the members of the Board of Directors, the Budget and Finance Committee hereby recommends the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas on August 5th, 2013, excuse me, the Board of Education has expressed interest in acquiring the property located at 1800 West East Gibson Street, formerly the PA Military and Veteran Affairs Vehicle Maintenance Site, as a possible site to build a new elementary school to service the educational needs of the students from East Scranton. And whereas the Scranton School District officially voted to offer to pay the fair market value of $128,000 to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to acquire this property for the purpose of building a new elementary school in East Scranton. And whereas the Scranton School District has since conducted a Phase 1 environmental assessment on the property located at 1800 East Gibson Street, and it indicates that there is some level of soil contamination, requiring additional investigation to determine the level of remediation work required to clean the site. And whereas since the original intention of the Board of Education was to build an elementary school on this site, the board has decided that this site is not conducive to be utilized as an educational site, and now therefore be it resolved that the school district of the city of Scranton authorizes the superintendent of schools, deputy superintendent of finance, and/or the solicitor to forward a letter to the Department of General Services, Bureau of Real Estate, officially withdrawing our application to acquire this property. Respectfully submitted.
On the question? Hearing none, roll call. Mrs. Orr?
Mr. Dewey?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli? Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Okay, Personnel Director Martinelli.
Members of the Board of School Directors, City of Scranton, the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the following be approved. Rescinding of leave of absence, non-certified, Marie Terrell, effective February 3rd, 2014. I so move.
On the question,
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
on the question, I have a question about this. I thought that this was a resignation.
It was. Leave of absence is incorrect. So you're rescinding of a resignation, not a leave of absence.
Okay. So what does that mean for this? The resignation is being rescinded, and where is this employee going?
This employee will be going to a different position.
Roll call.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
I'm sorry, just, once again on the question, do we have to have an amendment to this, or that's fine?
I think it's probably a typographic error, but,
Okay.
For the record, you may want to do an amendment first. An amendment, just for the record.
Okay, so what we're voting on is an amendment then?
Amendment first, yes.
Okay, so this is, what we're voting on now is an amendment to change this from rescinding of a leave of absence to rescinding of a resignation.
That's correct.
Check. What's the change of vote?
Well, why don't we do the roll call again?
Okay.
So that we can-
Roll call again. Or, well, should we have, we need a second or a motion?
I'll make the motion. Okay.
Second.
I'll second.
So, roll call on the amendment to change it to a resignation, rescinding of resignation.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Now, a motion to accept the rescinding of the resignation.
And that's a motion to, for the leave absence.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Questions? Roll call.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
I apologize for not spotting that sooner. This is
It's okay.
Members of the Board of School Directors, City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the individual specific role be appointed to professional positions in the Scranton School District, assigned to substitute teaching assignments. It is recommended that the substitute specific role be assigned to positions indicated at the established rate. Maria Rinaldi, ESL Bancroft, Lisa Motter, Cindy Bart Whittier, Jessica McCauley, grade 1, Bancroft, Nicole Martino, grade 2, Bancroft, Kathy Mayer, Literacy Computer, West Scranton High, Laura Roach, Special Ed, Pamela. I so move.
Second.
On the question? Okay, I just have one question. Now, all these, we're voting on these after the substitute positions have been started. So these have all been there since the start?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Members of the school director consider this grant as a recommendation of personnel committee that the following appointments we may be approved. Patrick Gavin, school locker room attendant, Trent Knight, Marie Terrell, all monitor, no teaching committee in school. Appointment is effective upon receipt of proper federal criminal records, immigration, medical, and child abuse reports. Salaries in accordance with the appropriate salary schedule. And so moved.
Second.
On the question, I just think it's important to note that we're just filling positions that have already existed. People are fit out of them. Roll call.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
It's all manager.
Thank you, Director. Buildings and Grounds, Director Donahue.
The Buildings and Grounds Committee presents the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School District has acquired property adjacent to the Whittier Elementary School for the purpose of relieving site constraints and enhancing playground facilities for the students. And whereas it has been determined by the district administration and school board that modifications to the site are required. Whereas prior to beginning any detailed design or engineering work on this project, the Palumbo Group and Peters Design Group shall provide the district with a detailed scope of work with estimated cost, and therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board authorizes the Palumbo Group to begin the process of evaluating existing conditions and propose a design to accommodate the vehicular traffic, required parking, and new playground area, and be it further resolved that the Palumbo Group engage the services of the district engineer, Peters Design Group, for any required engineering. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I think, if I remember correctly, last week, the Palumbo Group said they would give us a cost estimate before we were to vote on this tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we have received that cost estimate.
I have not received anything from them.
If you look at the next resolution, there's a price in there. So is it reasonable for us to expect that we would see a not to exceed amount on this resolution before we're asked to vote on it?
Which resolution? I don't
10 and 1. So on 10 and 2, there's a not to exceed amount.
Correct.
Is it reasonable for us to expect that 10 and 1 should include a not to exceed amount?
They're two separate projects though, right?
Yeah, I understand, but I think we want to
think
know
just like
what the
using it as
scope
an
of
example.
the
Oh, okay.
work may entail. Does anyone here from Colombo to speak on this?
Madam President,
Yes.
we weren't asked to present the, that's my knowledge, Bill was here last time, he spoke before, but he's out of town today. I didn't know that a cost was requested, if it was. I can't speak for Bill because he's not here, but he was the lead on this.
Well, Director Donahue, this is your resolution coming from Buildings and Grounds. Do you want to table it?
I would like to request to table it and just until we get a cost estimate or,
Or not to
yeah,
exceed?
so, yeah.
That seems reasonable.
So I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second it.
On the question, hearing none, roll call to table 10M1 until we get either a cost estimate or a not to exceed amount.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli? Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Thank you.
The Buildings and Grounds Committee,
I'd like to add that this is a project we're all looking forward to. Moving forward and website, we're going to the website now, but we would like to have this cost analysis done for the next work meeting, work session, and meeting, so we can get this moving forward.
Agreed. I don't know if we normally have to ask for those. As I said, it's included in the 10M2, done by the same group of people, so I don't know if it's just something that was overlooked or if that's something we have to ask for.
Excuse me, for clarification purposes, in 10M2, at a work session when we talked about moving forward with the 1,200-seat gym project, it was at that point the direction for my office to obtain from the Peters Group, Palumbo Group, and from Geoscience a cost a scope of work with a deliverable and a not to exceed, which we got presented, and I believe that's how that came from. I have not had anything, not in any involvement with the Palumbo Group or the Peters Group on the Whittier project, and my one question was, prior to that, is you need to take a look at whether you're going to do the variance, and that's what, when I spoke out, I believe in January, before we move forward, so I think it'd be more prudent to get a scope of work and a not to exceed as to what they need to do as far as the Whittier before we proceed.
During our last meeting, that was the question of the variance. The city was going to back to see if on the left side of the alley is doable, the right side. Dorothy?
Yes, I believe that Mr. Byron spoke to that point, didn't he?
Yes, he
To
did.
the variance.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And we are going to use this. Yeah, we are going to. That's probably going to be a big part of the cost factor there. The right side probably going to be lesser than the left side. So we move forward, try to get that variance done quickly, so we can see where we're at cost.
Well, when is the next Buildings and Grounds Committee? It's coming up next week, isn't it?
We could have them.
So
Yeah.
after we have the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting, if need be, if we're pressed for time, we always have a special meeting to approve moving forward with that.
maybe we could have one after the Budget and Finance. That's next Wednesday, I think, the 16th.
Mr. Sunday, can you speak to somebody from the Palumbo Group tomorrow? And
Yes,
have them be prepared to come to the Buildings and Grounds meeting next week?
and the Peters Group, and I would tell them that we need a scope of work with the not to exceed number.
Thank you.
The Buildings and Grounds Committee presents the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School Board had engaged the services of the Palumbo Group and the Peters Design Group to complete an architectural and engineering study of various options for a gymnasium addition at the West Scranton High School, and whereas an option presented for a 1,200-seat capacity gymnasium has been approved by the school board, and whereas proposals for the architectural and engineering schematic design and geotechnical engineering services phase of the project have been submitted in the amount of $138,000, and therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board authorizes the Palumbo Group, Peters Design Group, and Geoscience to proceed with the schematic design phase of the West Scranton High School Gymnasium addition with a not-to-exceed amount of $138,000.
Second.
Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question,
On the question, given Madam President, that looking forward to see this project move, it's been a long time coming, and about time is moving on this, and it's going to be a great project for the West Scranton High School.
Deputy Director Scherer. Roll call.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Dewey?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
Special Education Committee, Director Oles.
Thank you. Members of the Board of School Directors and the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Special Education Committee and the Scranton School District begins development of a special center-based program for students with autism and emotional disturbances for the 2004-2015 school year. Whereas pursuit of the federal regulations under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act 20 U.S.C.A. 1400-1482 and 22 PA Code, Chapter 14, school district must provide access a full continuum of placement options for children with disabilities. Whereas the Scranton School District will engage in local community resources to partner with mental health and behavioral interventions. Whereas the Scranton School District will engage in the work of local universities and begin the most updated research and support into the educational program. Be it therefore resolved that the Scranton School District Special Education Department will provide the continuum of programs and services to meet the needs of our students with disabilities. Respectively submitted.
Second.
On the question? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Martinelli?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mrs. Oleski?
Yes.
Mr. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mrs. McGuigan?
Yes.
8 affirmative.
President's report. I would just like to congratulate both high schools on the wonderful programs they put on this past weekend. And remind everybody, I believe it's April 12th is the autism fundraiser.
April 19th?
April 19th is an autism fundraiser at Southside Bowling Green. And also, too, I want to, it's Strikes for Autism, and tickets are available at the Administration Building Special Education Office for $12. It's Saturday, April 19th, from 12 until 2 at the Southside Bowl. And all proceeds are going to benefit the autistic students in the district. The $12, does that allow people to bowl, or?
It does, and I apologize, I believe the date, I apologize, is the 12th. It's not this coming Saturday, it's the following Saturday.
19th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that was my error, I apologize for that, but yes, the tickets are available, also at Kennedy Elementary, and there's a number on the posting, and those students, so you can definitely see them.
Before we start, I was in Georgia, fundraiser. So everybody knows that's great. Yeah. I think it's from 6 to 10 or 6 to 11.
And it would probably be this is a Saturday, right?
It is.
So that would probably
It's not this Saturday.
Yeah, I'm sure. Have a great day.
Okay, also too, I want to thank all of the volunteers of the Scranton School District, both students and employees who helped with the first, and I guess it's going to be the annual half marathon that was held yesterday. And in particular, Justin McGregor for the work that he put into it. And that's all I have at this time. New business?
Yes, Madam President. I'm asking the board if it's okay if I go ahead. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been doing a little bit of research with a program PNC Bank has with their e-card. It's a way you get rebates for spending. And I asked Solicitor Minor, and he said that Blue Cross, we can make our payments with that and see it as a new way to bring in revenue in the school district. And I would wonder, I ask if for the next work session, you could maybe have someone representing PNC to come in and give us a little demonstration, if that's okay with the rest of the board.
That's something that we use with them already, and it would just be like an addition to it?
I'm unsure of that at the time, but I'm sure that they could explain it further
Right.
and better than I can at this time.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I just wonder if anyone else, if there's any other banks that might offer
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that.
And if there's other
Maybe
banks,
invite others.
yeah, we could invite other banks. If Mr. Sunday, you can contact any local banks that can, provide the same, that they can come in at the same day.
Sir?
Okay, and Director Casey, you can certainly have that under one of your committee meetings,
Okay.
whichever one wants, since it's your idea to bring that forward. Anyone else have any business? Hearing none, can I have an adjournment, motion for adjournment?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.